Don't open any of it. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. This might not be 15 minutes, but that's okay. How has your life been different than what you imagined?
I can't even remember imagining what my life would be like. There are little bits and pieces that I dreamed about when I was a teenager. I wanted to be an ornithologist, one who studies birds and bird life. I don't. Life was so simple for us in Shelley. My whole life was just working on farms.
So why did you want to study birds?
I was just fascinated by them. Still am.
Like just flight or the birds themselves, or what?
Their plumage, their feathers, where they live, their calls. I just found it fascinating. My favorite was to go out in the country or out in behind the house and listen to the meadowlarks. But that just kind of, after my mission, I came back and realized I needed to do something.
So you talked about life was simple. Did nobody think about life outside of Shelley, or was that just not part of what your parents? I mean, was college talked about in your home?
No, absolutely. I was the first one to graduate from college. That's after Wendell, David, Perry, Jean, Bonnie, Rose. I was the first one to graduate from college.
So I assume then you were also the first one to get a master's degree.
Right.
And then the first one to almost get a PhD.
Well, I wouldn't say it was almost. I took a semester of Spanish because I had to have a language, and people started talking to me. My dear mentor, Bob Matthews, said, "Why do you want to get a PhD? Is it for the money?" And he was the dean of the religion department. We were very good friends.
Well, I mean, in reality, you probably got a pseudo PhD by working at farms with all the research and writing. Would you say that was a equivalent or a similar amount of effort and work, or no?
Equivalent, because there was no language, but I certainly learned a lot of things that nobody else in seminary was learning at all.
So let me go back to this. So you're the first person in your family to graduate from college.
Was me.
Was you? Was there resentment towards you from your brothers and sisters?
Oh, heavens, no. They cheered me on.
Okay.
And Jean didn't need any degree. I know she went to college for a while in Logan or Brigham City. Bonnie married Dale, and he got a good job, and there was no need for a college there. Rose went to college and got a degree so she could teach high school, and did that for many years. Van piddled around a little bit with classes up at Rick's College. Bruce never did. He went right into the potato factory. Bob got a degree so he could teach, and he ended up being a principal. So, but that's strung out over a period of many, many years. When I was growing up pre-college, Mom and Dad never talked about that.
So going back to there wasn't even a process where you imagined what life might be like. At what point was it college when you went to California? At what point did you think about, this house or this car or this job or this career or our family or this vacation or this? At what point did you, or maybe you just never imagined what life would be like?
I don't think I did. It was a matter of necessity. When I told you on the other interview, I was not in love with the potato fields. They supported me for years, my work on farms, etc. But I was determined after my mission at some time to get out of Shelley and get an education besides farming. Not that that was bad, but it just was not for me. California, the lifestyle there amongst my peers and the whole thing overall just turned me off. So I just sunk into my education, summer school, night classes, etc., etc. Everything I could do to get through as quick as I could. And that continued when I went to Seattle. I was earning money for tuition, and I came back to BYU and sunk my life into getting a degree, two
Okay.
degrees.
2 degrees, double. Okay. So let me ask you this, and this might come up later in some later questions, but has your marriage with mom been different than how you imagined it would be?
Well, not particularly to begin with, but as we got older and the experience with Holly in Tonga, that certainly changed my thinking on a bunch of things. Plan of salvation, the Savior's atonement, spirit world, those kinds of things. My entire life changed as I sat in that hospital for 6 weeks and watched my daughter die.
Well, I think, I mean, that's an interview question. It's in its own. So after your second daughter dies, that clearly was not in your plans at all whatsoever.
No.
No, right. No, we've talked about this, and I'm not assuming that it would be in your plans. How did your perspective change? And maybe we should save this for another one, because that's going to be a longer question.
Well, I will tell you that before we went to Tonga, I had dreams and impressions that we were going to have some difficult times with Holly. No details. That came after we got to Tonga and after Holly and I went to New Zealand to the hospital. Then things started to settle out, and I could see why certain things were told me while we were still in Utah about Holly. It upset Mother. She said, "Don't talk about it anymore. I don't want to hear it."
Okay.
I never did.
Well, okay. So Holly will be a separate discussion.
Okay. Yeah.
So for those that are listening, yeah. So Holly is an older sibling that I have that has passed away, that died. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Okay, so I can cut that time out after. Has your kids' lives been different than you imagined it would be? So as a father, you have this idea of what your children's life will be. At what point did you realize that it's not going to be the way you wanted it to be, or that it's better than you wanted it to be?
Well, uh,
And I don't think you need to talk about individual kids. I think just in the general terms.
well, I'm not sure that I gave the lives of my kids. I don't remember thinking and pondering and planning all the details. I just more or less took life as it came. And when I started to realize this business of raising kids started with Aaron, and when he'd get into trouble and do crazy things, and I thought, oh, this is not the way it's supposed to be. And that pattern has continued all the way through his life. He has not risen to reasonable expectations. For you and the girls, Megan, no, I was a little bit muffed along the way with Megan because she was so short and there was no prospects of her getting taller because the doctor said that her growth joints or whatever had closed up and she would not be growing any taller. But that's the way it is. That was in the genes. Laura, obviously, I tried to counsel her not to marry John, but she did it anyway. I tried to counsel her to stop things with Carrie, but she's doing it anyway. And I understand where she's at. She's lonely. She's found a friend. But I think they should either get married or get separated permanently. And she tells me she's done that, but she's not, because I can hear her in the living room talking to Carrie. And I thought she'd stopped it all because Carrie was dating another girl. Anyway, so I
So
don't know, as far as gifts and talents, spiritual gifts, physical talents, I didn't see a lot of that in my kids as far as making plans. I just
do you see that? Do you see that in your grandkids?
more so than I did with my own children.
Do
But even
you?
then,
And I mean, this is about you. Do you feel like? And I'm not saying it's your fault. Do you feel like that's your fault because you didn't recognize that, or it was just you? There was not enough time. How? I mean, clearly, your kids have specific gifts. Could you recognize them now, or not?
now I see some, but 20 years ago, 25 years ago, they were slow coming.
Okay. Okay.
I mean,
All
if
right.
you ask me, did I see you becoming a teacher? Absolutely not. Or a principal? No way.
uh, yeah, yep. It definitely was not written in the stars, but it was. So, okay. Well, we can talk about why that was not a possibility, and I think it's common sense that my behavior in school and my academic, it was none of that was there.
I'll say this about Aaron. I think he's done a marvelously crappy job of developing his skills and talents. I know he's very gifted, but he's allowed himself to be pulled in too many directions where he's lost momentum and direction. It's his choice. I don't take any
Okay.
responsibility.
So at what point did you realize that you didn't have control of how that was going to work out?
Oh,
And
gee.
I'm saying with all four of us, like at what point did you realize? Because was it when we left the house, when we moved out? I mean, I know you're still a parent, but at what point did you realize like they're
With
gonna have to
him,
just
I think it was in high school. He did his own thing. He was a very rebellious, disobedient. And I realized that I didn't think he would make his mission. Laura had her head on right and her heart in the right place. Uh, Early on, her education and her travels, I thought were great blessings. It was when she connected up with John that I was concerned about her unwillingness to take counsel. You,
so I should add something here. I think it's important to note to those that are watching, the grandkids, right, or anybody else, is that we kind of had two separate families. I had my older brother and sister who were in a stage when probably weren't as financially secure. At least maybe that's how I imagined it. But
yeah,
by the time myself and my younger sister became teenagers, our parents were much more financially secure. I probably feel like we had more opportunities, like maybe, I don't know, than my older sibling. But I think that's a general consensus for families. I mean, that's even how it's looking like in my own family now. But anyway,
yeah.
maybe a second income comes in, raises come in, inflation with pay and stuff like that. But
Holly was in the middle of the five of you, and when she passed away, it did almost become two separate families. And I'm not sure I picked up on that right away. I had this homogeneous, from Aaron to Megan, that what was going on in your kids' lives was not always obvious to me, that there was a separation between them. It was, should have been obvious, but I didn't pick up on it right away.
okay.
You got to remember something. I was trying to, this is not a justification, it's just an explanation of what was going on. I was trying to become a professional, top-notch seminary teacher. And a lot of my efforts were directed to studying the scriptures, finding answers to every question that my seminary students could ask. And I pored over the church books. Look right here.
So, and I'm not saying that this is what you're saying, but in retrospect, do you think you spent more time on your career than you did with your kids?
Yeah, I would admit that.
Do you think that not all, but some of the way that we are is because of that?
I'd say certainly, but I would have a hard time picking it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel that's why you were a different grandfather than you were a father? In the sense that you
partially, but my grandkids are so dang easy to love. And I can see their personalities now much better than I saw my own children's personality.
So do you think that's just a part of your growth and development as a man and growing into experience of life?
I take the time to sit down and, observe, and I try to communicate, but that's not always worked out well.
Okay. Well, there's a follow-up question to that, but I think that'll be its own interview. And I don't want to tell you what it is because there's one question. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts before we go?
Oh, I could go on, but that's probably sufficient for the day.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks, Dad. Love you. I will talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye. I'm gonna end the recording.